You spoke of how there's a lot of optimism around the India story at this moment. How important is political stability in that matrix of economic optimism? There's a big election next year. The growth that everyone foresees for India over the next 10, 20 years, how much rides on political stability, and how much of this India growth story could continue regardless of who's in power?
You know, one of the things that I think about India is really underappreciated, and I was recently also in Karnataka covering the state election out there, but I think one thing which is really underappreciated about India, something that Prime Minister Modi used to speak about a lot initially, but I think he has toned it down. But I think this is the real strength of India, and what I see is its competitive federalism. So I think we spend a lot of attention and time in India, in Delhi, what's happening in Delhi, but a lot of the decisions, a lot of the ability to attract foreign investment or change the environment on the ground also lies with a lot of state governments. And I think that what India needs to see more of is this competitive federalism, which is that you have states competing with each other to try and attract more investment.
But they're already doing that.
Exactly. So I think that, like for me, that is what is the counter to your point, that is it all about political stability. I'm saying because if you have something at the center, but this, you know, what the states are doing is equally important. So I think that is what really matters for me in terms of, you know, what happens in India.
You know, one of the things that you spoke about is that the government hasn't done too many bad things.
Yeah.
There's a big election around the corner. We saw, you mentioned Karnataka, that in Karnataka the Congress laid out these big 5 promises, which are, you know, derisively called freebies, which did play a role in helping the Congress win Karnataka. Now they repeated that promise in Madhya Pradesh. We're already seeing that state finances are under duress as a result of that. As similar promises are made and implemented in different states, that puts more pressure on state budgets. Is this now a trap that we're in? Could there be a way out? Because the Prime Minister, for what it's worth, says that they don't believe in freebies. But naturally there's an election and there's pressure, and they have to end up doing things which are populist, which they may not otherwise ordinarily want to do. What's the way out of this, and how dangerous is this, according to you, for the India growth story?
You're absolutely correct that this is the big risk, right? Like instead of that the competitive federalism degenerates into competitive populism, which is that you end up getting all these kind of things happen. But I think it's the problem in India is that the DNA is socialist across the board. I don't think it's a particular party as such, which, you know, does a lot of these freebies. Because even when the government was going for elections in 2019, the current central government, they did do a lot of spending just before the 2019 election. So the hope is that they don't sort of have to do too much of this, or they don't. But they, you know, but that is obviously like the risk, and I think that it's a risk which is reflective of this socialist DNA. You know, like I still remember this bit of research that I was doing for my previous book, which really stayed with me, which is that in India today you have more than 1,000 centrally sponsored government schemes, or some number. Nobody has a proper count of it. So there's a tendency of just keep coming up with new numbers without knowing what the delivery is. What the good thing I'd say about India, which has happened, is that the delivery mechanism has improved significantly, right? So in the past, if there was only the famous Rajiv Gandhi statement that only 15 paisa of every rupee makes its way to the final beneficiary, like what I've been seeing in my travels in India is that that number has dramatically increased now, which is that it's not 15 paisa, and it may not be the entire rupees getting distributed, but it may be 50-60%. There's a very significant improvement in the delivery
mechanism. It's likely higher than that, because a lot of it is now direct benefit transfer straight to somebody's account. So and a lot of government purchases also through e-government marketplaces. So the avenues for corruption have come down.
Yeah, the avenues for corruption through that route, where the direct beneficiary is getting it, have reduced significantly. I mean, there's no debate about that. And I think that this is where digitization has played such a big role in helping it up. Whether now, as I said, that what you still get to hear when you go out there is how much of are the tax authorities, the investigative authorities, how much power do they have to still extort, to still do that. That is something I still hear a lot of negative prints on. As I said, that what's the idea here? The idea is that the Indian economy is poised to grow at a reasonably fast clip of at least 3 percentage points faster than the global economic growth. That's a pretty significant achievement. That's what India has been achieving for a while. Issue is, how do we do even better than that, which is what we'd like to and aspire to do. And in that way, we have to still come up with constructive suggestions on how that is done, rather than sort of feel that, okay, all we have to do now is to celebrate the story, and there's nothing left, which is to be done. I think that mindset is what I think is the biggest risk in India today.